I never thought someone I loved could make me feel completely invisible and scared in my own life. But that's exactly what happened last weekend. We had been together for 5 years. 5 years of planning, dreaming, and convincing myself that we were solid. I thought I knew him. I thought I could trust him. I was wrong. It started at a small get-together at his friend's apartment. Nothing fancy, just a few drinks, some chips, and people talking and laughing. I was standing by the snack table, trying to make small talk with his friends when I heard him. He leaned against the counter, a drink in hand, smiling. And then he said it. If she were prettier, I'd marry her. It hit me like a punch to the stomach. I froze. My heart stopped. I didn't know if I should laugh, scream, or cry. The words didn't make sense. I looked at him, expecting, hoping, that he would notice my face, realize how awful that sounded. But he didn't. He just smirked, looking at his friends like it was the funniest thing in the world. The room felt suddenly smaller. The laughter around me sounded distant, like it was happening underwater. My chest tightened. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I felt rooted to the floor, paralyzed, unable to decide whether to storm out or pretend I hadn't heard. His friends laughed along. I felt my face burning, a mixture of anger and humiliation that I hadn't expected. One of them nudged him, saying something like, "Bro, you're too honest." And he laughed even harder, taking a sip of his drink like he hadn't just crushed me in front of everyone. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. I wanted him to look at me with the eyes I thought he had for me 5 years ago. But those eyes were gone, replaced by something I didn't recognize, something cold and distant. I stayed there, shaking slightly, listening to his laughter and the conversation I could no longer join. My mind was spinning. 5 years. 5 years of dinners, late-night talks, laughter, and plans. 5 years of telling him everything about me. And this is what I get? I tried to tell myself he was joking. Maybe it was meant to be funny. But it wasn't. The way he said it, the way he looked at me while his friends laughed, it wasn't funny. It was deliberate. And it was cruel. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I smiled when someone looked at me, nodded when they spoke, but every word they said felt distant, irrelevant. All I could hear was that sentence repeating in my head. If she were prettier, I'd marry her. The words echoed and bounced around like a hammer. When we left, I didn't speak. I didn't know what to say. He chatted casually in the car, talking about some work thing, some joke about his friends, and I sat there, pretending I was fine. I wasn't. I wasn't fine at all. By the time we got home, my hands were trembling. My chest hurt. I kept thinking of that smirk, that laugh, the way he treated me like I was a problem, like I wasn't enough. I wanted to confront him, to make him see how deeply he had cut me. But I didn't know if I had the words. Finally, I tried. My voice was small, shaky. Did you really say that? He shrugged, smiling faintly. Relax. I was joking. You know I love you. But it didn't feel like love. It never had. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every sound in the apartment made me jump, the faucet dripping, the hum of the fridge, even the wind against the window. I kept replaying the moment, imagining his words being said over and over, imagining his laughter bouncing off the walls in my head. For the first time in 5 years, I realized I didn't know him at all. The next day, I tried to act normal. I went to work, talked to colleagues, laughed at jokes, but it all felt hollow. Every time my phone buzzed, I imagined it was him texting me something cruel, laughing at my reaction. When I got home, he was already there, sitting on the couch with a beer. He looked at me, smiled casually, like nothing had happened. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw the bottle at him. But I didn't. I just sat down across from him, my hands pressed to my knees. I can't stop thinking about last night, I said, my voice trembling. How could you say something like that about me? He laughed, low and easy, as if he had been expecting me to bring it up. Relax. You know I didn't mean it. I was joking. That's not funny, I whispered, my eyes fixed on the floor. It hurt. It was humiliating. He shrugged, leaning back. I don't know why you're taking it so seriously. Everyone laughed. Even your friends would have laughed if they were there. That's when I realized something terrifying. He didn't care about how I felt. He didn't even notice the hurt in my eyes. He was thinking about how the joke landed, not how it had crushed me. For the rest of the evening, I sat there, feeling smaller and smaller. He went on with his casual chatter, flipping through channels, laughing at something on TV. I kept thinking about all the little moments over the past 5 years that had seemed normal but suddenly felt like warnings I had ignored. There were times he had criticized the way I dressed, called me clumsy in front of his friends, or made jokes about my appearance. I had brushed them off, told myself he loved me and that he was just teasing. But last night made me realize those moments weren't teasing, they were practice. They were him testing me, seeing how far he could go before I noticed. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him leaning against the counter, that smirk on his face, his friends laughing. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that wasn't going to end. By the 3rd day, I was exhausted. I couldn't eat properly, couldn't focus at work, couldn't talk to anyone without replaying the scene in my head. Even small things terrified me, the sound of his keys in the door, his footsteps on the stairs. I felt like a stranger in my own apartment, like the person I loved had become someone else overnight. I started noticing things I had ignored before. How he would glance at other women when we went out. How he would make jokes about their appearance, testing reactions, like he had with me. How he sometimes looked at me in a way that wasn't loving, it was calculating, assessing, cold. I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it before. 5 years of shared life, and I had been blind. I kept asking myself, was I really ever enough for him? Or was I just convenient? Finally, I confronted him again. This time, I wasn't trembling. I was shaking with anger. Do you even love me? I demanded. Because last weekend, in front of your friends, it didn't seem like it. He looked at me, calm, almost amused. Of course I love you. Don't be dramatic. But it wasn't dramatic. It was terrifying. I realized that the person I thought I knew, the one I planned my future with, was capable of treating me like a joke, like a placeholder until someone prettier came along. That night, I lay in bed and thought about all the times I had ignored the signs, the offhand comments, the dismissive laughs, the way he made me feel small when we were alone. It all added up now, like pieces of a puzzle I had been too afraid to see. I felt like I was losing my mind. I loved him, yes, but I also feared him. Not because he would hurt me physically, but because he had the power to make me doubt myself so completely. He could destroy my self-esteem with a single sentence, a single smirk. I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining leaving the apartment, walking out into the night, and never looking back. But then I'd imagine him laughing again, casual, unbothered, like he always was, and a shiver would run down my spine. By the end of the week, I was exhausted, broken, and terrified of the person I had trusted most. Every time he smiled at me, I felt the weight of last weekend pressing down on me, reminding me that I was never truly safe, not emotionally, not mentally. And I realized something even worse, I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. I didn't know if I could ever see him the same way. He had changed in my eyes, and the man I thought I loved was gone. The days after that night became a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I kept replaying his words, his laugh, his smirk. Every detail, every movement. I could see it all so clearly, like a loop I couldn't escape.
I started remembering things I had ignored before. Small things seemingly harmless, that suddenly felt like warnings. Like the time we went to his friend's birthday party 2 years ago, and he whispered in my ear, "You'd be hotter if you wore something like that," and I laughed nervously, pretending it didn't hurt. Or when we went out with his coworkers, and he joked about another woman's body in front of me, and I forced a smile. All of those moments now seemed like threads in a tapestry I had never wanted to see. They all led here, to the moment he said those words in front of his friends, casually dismantling everything I had believed about us. I realized I had been blind. I had trusted him completely, loved him without question, and now I felt like a fool. But it wasn't just embarrassment, it was fear. Fear that the person I had built my life around could treat me like a joke, like I was nothing. I started watching him differently. Not with suspicion at first, but with a creeping, gnawing unease. I noticed the way he looked at other women when we went out, the way he'd make little comments about their appearance, testing them, testing me. I noticed how he would smile at me sometimes, not in a loving way, but in a way that felt like assessment, like he was measuring me against some impossible standard I would never meet. Every day, I felt smaller, weaker, more invisible. I began questioning my own memory, my own judgment. Had I imagined things? Had I misread him all these years? But no, the words were real. The laughter was real. His friends had heard it. I wasn't imagining it. I started planning, in my head, what I would do if I left. I imagined walking out of the apartment, leaving everything behind. But then I imagined him following me, smiling, saying something casual, like it didn't matter, like I was overreacting. That smile haunted me. It was the smile of someone who knew he had power over me, and it terrified me. I even started imagining conversations with my friends, telling them what happened. But I couldn't. How could I explain it without sounding crazy? He said I'm not pretty enough to marry? It sounded absurd. And yet, it was real. It was the truth, and it shook me to my core. Then came the flashbacks, the moments I had tucked away because they were uncomfortable, or because I had convinced myself they didn't matter. Like the time he rolled his eyes when I suggested we take a vacation together, muttering something under his breath about it being too expensive for someone like me. Or when he laughed at my dream job, saying I should aim for something more suitable. All of it clicked into place now. All of it made sense. He had never really seen me as his equal, as someone worthy of love for who I was. He had tolerated me, perhaps even enjoyed my company, but deep down, he had always been measuring me, judging me, waiting for the perfect reason to laugh in my face. I felt trapped. I loved him, yes. I had spent 5 years imagining a life with him. But now every interaction was poisoned. Every word he said could carry a hidden barb. Every joke could be a test. I didn't know how to live with that knowledge. One night, after he fell asleep, I stayed awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant sounds of the city outside, and yet all I could see was that moment at his friend's apartment. The way he had said it. The way his friends had laughed. The way he had looked at me like I was something beneath him. I realized I couldn't forget it. I couldn't undo it. And I realized something even worse. I might never feel safe around him again. I might never trust him again. The next day, I tried talking to him one last time. I tried to explain how hurt I was, how betrayed I felt. But he just shrugged, smiled faintly, and said, "You're overthinking it. It was a joke. You know I love you." That smile. That casual dismissal. It was worse than the words themselves. It told me that he didn't care. It told me that my feelings didn't matter. It told me that he had always had the upper hand, and I had been blind to it. I realized then that I was living with a stranger. A person I thought I knew, loved, and trusted had been hiding behind a mask all these years. And the mask had slipped, revealing someone I barely recognized and who terrified me more than any stranger ever could. Now, every time I see him, I feel the weight of that night pressing down on me. Every laugh, every smirk, every casual glance carries a hidden meaning I can't ignore. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, always waiting for the next joke, the next comment, the next betrayal. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive him. I don't know if I can stay in the same room without feeling fear, doubt, and anger crushing me from the inside. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again. All I know is that the person I thought I was going to marry, the person I loved more than anyone, has shown me a side of himself that makes me feel small, invisible, and terrified. And that knowledge is a kind of horror that never leaves you. Weeks passed, and nothing got easier. I tried to distract myself with work, with friends, with small routines, but the memory of that night clung to me like a shadow. It wasn't just the words he had said, it was the way he had said them, the way he had laughed, the way he had made me feel like I didn't exist. I kept imagining all the things he might be thinking behind that calm, casual facade. Every glance, every comment, every tiny smirk felt loaded with meaning. I couldn't tell if he was still joking or if he was silently judging me every day. The thought made my chest tighten and my stomach churn. One night, I sat in the living room, staring at him from across the couch. He was scrolling on his phone, completely absorbed, completely unaware, or maybe he was very aware, and that thought scared me even more. I felt like I was trapped in a house with a man who could destroy me emotionally at any moment, and I couldn't leave fast enough, but I also couldn't move. I started replaying all the times I had ignored the small signs, the jokes at my expense, the dismissive laughter, the sideways glances. I saw now that they weren't isolated incidents. They were all part of the same pattern. And I had ignored it because I didn't want to face the truth. The man I had loved might never have truly loved me. Then came the nights I spent lying awake, imagining him telling the joke again, in front of friends I didn't know, in front of strangers I couldn't trust. I could feel it, the humiliation, the sting of betrayal, the hollow pit of fear in my chest. And the worst part was the realization that I might never be able to trust him again, not fully, not ever. I started watching him carefully, almost like a detective. I noticed the little things I had never paid attention to before. The way he adjusted his hair when someone attractive walked by. The way he laughed slightly differently when a woman he found attractive spoke. The subtle way he measured my reactions, testing boundaries, seeing how far he could push without consequences. It was like living with a stranger who had taken my life and rearranged it so I couldn't recognize it. I was constantly tense, always second-guessing, always bracing for the next cruel comment. And yet, he seemed completely unaware, or maybe he was aware, and that was even more terrifying. I remember one evening, I tried to talk to him again. My voice was firm, my hands shaking. "Do you even see me as your partner? Or am I just here? A placeholder?" He looked up from his phone, blinked, and said casually, "Of course I see you. Why are you making a big deal out of this?" That casual dismissal, it cut deeper than the original joke. It wasn't the words, it was the calm certainty that he didn't care, that my feelings didn't matter. It was the silent knowledge that he had all the power, and I was powerless to make him see me differently. After that, I stopped trying to talk. I started keeping notes in my head, cataloging every small slight, every joke, every glance. It became a mental map of danger. Every moment I spent with him was like walking through a room full of hidden traps. And I had no idea which one would spring next. I even started imagining leaving. I pictured packing my bags, walking out the door, and never coming back. I imagined him calling after me, laughing, dismissing my fear as overreaction. I imagined him smiling at friends and saying, casually, "She's overreacting." I was joking. And I felt it, the same pit of fear in my stomach. It was terrifying to realize that the person I had loved, trusted, and planned a life with could make me feel so small, so invisible, and so afraid without even raising his voice. The words, the laugh, the smirk, they had changed everything. They had shifted the foundation of my world, leaving me unsure if I could ever feel safe again, even in my own home. And I couldn't stop thinking about the future. Could I marry someone who saw me as less than enough? Could I trust someone who could throw me away with a single joke? The thought made my chest tighten, my hands tremble, my mind spin. I realized something else, too. Even if I stayed, I would never be the same. I would always be watching, always measuring, always bracing for the next slight. And the thought of spending a lifetime like that, constantly on edge, constantly afraid of being humiliated or dismissed, was more horrifying than anything else I could imagine. Some nights, I sit in the dark and imagine the worst-case scenario. I imagine him laughing in front of a room full of people, throwing words like knives, and I can feel the fear creeping into my bones. It isn't physical, it's a different kind of fear, one that eats at you quietly, one that makes you question every decision, every memory, every ounce of trust you've ever had. I don't know what I'll do. I don't know if I'll stay, if I'll leave, if I'll ever feel safe again. All I know is that the man I thought I was going to marry, the person I trusted more than anyone else, has shown me a side of himself that terrifies me. And the knowledge of that side, the smirk, the laugh, the casual dismissal, is something I carry with me every day, like a shadow I can't escape. I keep asking myself, do I stay with someone who could make me feel so small, so invisible, so afraid? Or do I leave, knowing that the memory of this horror will follow me forever? I don't have an answer yet. And maybe that's the scariest part of all. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. What would you have done if this happened to you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true, chilling, and emotional stories like this one. Your support means everything.